Samba de Amigo for the Nintendo Wii. Now, Samba de Amigo on the Wii, if for some reason you don't know what Samba de Amigo is, it is a rhythm game that was, I believe, originally an arcade game, but it got ported to the Dreamcast, and they have maraca controllers, right? So you shake these controllers, and there's motion sensors in them. So if you shake on the upper level, it hits like the upper notes. If you hit the middle level, it hits the middle notes, and there's a lower level, it's the lower notes. And the maracas, I've never played it, so hopefully I'm getting this right. But like the Dreamcast one, but there's like in the maracas, I believe there's like sand or whatever that makes the maraca noise and stuff. So you kind of have that tactile feeling of the stuff shaking around. And so it kind of made a lot of sense for them to make a Wii version of this game when the Wii came out, but it does feel very fueled by that like that Wii sentiment of like, hey, Wii motion control should be able to track all this stuff great, and so it makes a ton of sense for you to bring Samba de Amigo to the Wii. My experience, it definitely feels like a game that has to have a lot of compromises probably. I mean, again, I haven't played that original game, but the controller just doesn't quite feel up to the task, in my opinion. Now, I was reading some reviews online. Some people would say it doesn't work at all, and some people said that there's like perfect accuracy. So I think a lot of it comes down to being very specific with the angles of the Wii remote. The controllers themselves do a really good job of emulating kind of the feeling of shaking the maracas in some ways, as best you can for using something that's not a proprietary controller, right? So it has like a slight rumble every time you shake the Wiimote or the nunchuck. I guess the nunchuck probably wouldn't have rumble. I only use the 2 Wii remote mode just because I wanted to get the best accuracy possible. And so you get the little shake of the controller that kind of replicates the little sand or whatever that's in there that's shaking around. And then also if you have the speaker on the Wii remote turned on, which honestly most of the time I don't because for game recording stuff I have to turn it off, it makes a shaking noise. So it actually does a really good job of kind of emulating the feeling of using maracas, even though it's just the standard Wii remote. And so it's like it feels good to actually do the shake, and when it really works well, I think it's very successful in terms of with all the slower songs specifically, it's really kind of easy to track. The real challenge I think comes from the fact that it's less about height and more about angle, it feels like, when it comes to the game figuring out where you are. So if you do kind of go up, you kind of got to tilt the controllers back a little bit to kind of give it that angle and then shake up. But when things start to get really fast, keeping track of the fact that you are angling the controllers correctly can get really difficult. So you'll go up and you'll shake, but you're still holding the controller in a way that it's just the vertical up. So the game still kind of thinks you're just shaking in the middle space rather than the upper space. And it does seem like the game does a generally good job of tracking, what those angles are, but actually training yourself to make sure you're doing the right angles is really challenging. And the game does have a tutorial that kind of explains it all to you and shows you I don't know the Samba de Amigo's monkey's name, but him sitting there showing you what position you should have the Wii remotes in. But I feel like in a game like that, with how fast it gets and how quickly you have to kind of, by the end, start switching around between different notes or doing these kind of cross shakes where you're basically doing a middle shake and a higher shake on the left side of the screen, and you're kind of pointing over and making sure you're tilting the controllers right and things like that. It becomes really challenging to keep track of that stuff. And then so obviously being a rhythm game, if you mess up, you kind of just mess up, right? And just kind of gets knocked off your score. And so while it's it feels good to play the songs, I think generally, and I would probably recommend to people that they check out Samba de Amigo on the Wii, I don't think I would really recommend people try to actually seriously play Samba de Amigo on the Wii. Just because I found that it was just a lot more of a headache to kind of make sure my form was, super accurate. Now, I think there's a good argument, though, that, to some degree, normal rhythm games have this, too, where it comes to, pattern recognition and muscle memory that comes from that, right? So you see a pattern that comes up, and you don't even have to think about it. You just know the way you need to swipe your hands and stuff, and the order and the speed and all that stuff. And when you are just playing a rhythm game casually, that is not something you can really do super easily. So I think there is maybe some connection you can make there of once you get the muscle memory down of where your hands should be, if you played Samba de Amigo for the Wii long term, you might be able to get there where you could perfect every song reliably. But as somebody who's a casual rhythm game player, By the end of it, I definitely just kind of felt like there were some songs I kind of more or less gave up on. And what would happen is, like, if I failed the song enough, but I felt like it was just like me, like I just really couldn't get it tuned in, I would just kind of start, I hate doing this, but like randomly shaking to like I would kind of try to follow the song, but I would basically just kind of shake the whole time. And that would brute force myself through some songs, which is not the best way to play a game like that, you know, but it would just make me move on. Because I felt like the difficulty level of songs, because of that tracking element, was not particularly consistent. So, like, the last song in the game was, like, way easier than the, like, middle game ooh la la, you know, I forget what the song's called, but there's, like, one ooh la la song that I remember. But anyways, the Space Channel 5 song, one of the Space Channel 5 songs is literally, in my opinion, the hardest song in that game, and I just eventually brute forced it, as much as I love Space Channel 5 soundtrack. So, there's like a bunch of mini games in there too, but I just kind of ignored those. It's really the music game aspect that I think is really the focus. And it just has a great looking style that is the problem with all rhythm games, I feel like, where like there's so much stuff, maybe not so much stuff happening on screen, but there's a lot of like bubbly graphics and things like that, right? Of these characters all bouncing around, and there's Mii's with trumpets or something. Maybe they don't have trumpets, maybe they just have the maracas actually. I feel like there were characters with trumpets bouncing around at some point. But, this kind of really colorful, bubbly background that's just like super, super, Sega Dreamcast kind of aesthetic. But, you as the player, you're staring at the 6 points on screen where you need to shake the maracas, and that's it. That's like your pure focus. So all that other stuff in the background is kind of lost on you, except for the beginning and the end of the song. So it's more for, somebody who's watching you play kind of thing. So, but yeah, I just don't know what they could have done more to kind of make that game work with the technology that's in the original Wii remotes. The accelerometers in the Wii remote just aren't quite the greatest thing. But clearly people were able, like based off what I was reading online, people were able to make that game work. So maybe just if you decide to pick up Samba de Amigo on the Wii, just know your mileage is probably going to vary a little bit on that. And I personally, for me, I'd say maybe like, it felt like maybe 80 to 90% accurate, if not a little bit more than that, and just handle it casually because I can't really rely on the rest of those notes. Anyways, very cool game, and I think it's definitely worth giving a look if you're kind of looking at different ways people use the Wii remote and kind of like interesting styles, even if like it didn't really 100% translate over. I feel like from what probably what I believe the maracas are like. Again, I have not actually played Samba de Amigo using the maracas.
Samba de Amigo.